The first question is, it's a little long, Bhante. I'm gonna read it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because of craving, there is I-ness, mine-ness, selfness, and it is grabbing onto a notion of I, mine, myself that causes desire, which culminates in craving. This implies that craving is both the cause and the effect of I-ness, mineness, and a notion of self. Therefore, can one say that by gradually transcending this triple I notion by wisdom of seeing things as they really are, one eventually overcomes craving in the following way. As craving diminishes, the triple I fades. As the triple I further recedes, craving lessens even more. Eventually both are gone.
It is a statement. What is the question?
Veronique, do you think you can abbreviate that question?
I understand.
A little hard to follow.
I understand the statement. What is the question?
My question is it true that if the notion of I, mine, and the notion of self diminishes, then craving also diminishes, that they're mutually connected? Or is it that if craving diminishes, then the notion of I also diminishes? They kind of go hand in hand. Is it correct to think that way?
Yes, first the craving should be diminished in order for myself to diminish. And craving does not exist by itself. It has its supporter, that is ignorance. Because of ignorance, we don't know how harmful craving is. It is just like a fly falling into honey, get drowned and die, or flying into the flame or fire, not knowing that honey is sticky or fire burns. Similarly, when this ignorance does not allow, or the ignorance blocks our wisdom, then craving dominates. Craving becomes a power. If ignorance can show that craving's danger, then craving does not arise. So ignorance and craving go hand in hand. When a craving is ceased, what is called upadana, clinging, then myself does not arise. So we cannot overcome my mind, myself, without overcoming craving and ignorance. So what happened when one attains the first level of enlightenment? That person sees a way to overcome craving by seeing impermanence. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness. And that awareness also opens his wisdom eye, which is blocked by ignorance. So, when one sees impermanence, ignorance also slowly fades away, desire or craving fades away. Ignorance and craving go hand in hand, therefore both of them must be weakened and overcome in order to overcome I, my, and myself. Okay, Chaturi.
Thank you.
Next question.
Thank you, Bhante. Next question. Dear Bhante, is it possible in daily life to see the process of I and I object and consciousness connect to see contact arising? Or is it only in deep concentration that we can see this?
Well, in daily life, if we remain mindful, you can see them happening. Another thing I must clarify once again, all these stages take place so quickly that in any time, even in meditation, we won't notice the distinction. When, as I just mentioned earlier, only when we pay mindful attention, undivided attention without words, can we notice all the steps clearly. Therefore, whether we are in, of course, if we are engaged in one kind of activity, another you can notice. You are fully engaged in certain things and you are not paying attention to your mind, you have to pay attention to something outside. For instance, you are cutting something using knife and you have to use your fingers holding, and you have to pay attention to that to not to get yourself cut. In that situation, it sometimes it is difficult for somebody to pay attention to the mind, consciousness, contact, sensation or feeling, and all these things will happen because they happen very quickly. But if you do anything, even cutting, if you do it very slowly, you can notice all of them. Normally you don't cut that way. You cut something very, very quickly, and then you cannot notice all of them. In meditation also, if the mind is not properly focused, then you don't notice all of them. Okay, next question.
Thank you, Bhante. The next question is from one of our Bhavana residents, and this person writes, of all the five aggregates, perception or sanya is the hardest for my mind to identify. Perceptions can often be like a lens that colors my view in error. How can we weed out the roots of perception when they are hard to see?
That is a very good question. It's called sanya. Rupa sanya, saddha sanya, gandha sanya, ras sanya, pottabha sanya, dhamma sanya. 6 kinds of sanyas mean perception. Now, we know, say for instance, rupa sanya, the perception of form. There is a form outside and form inside. That is rupa. Outside form may vanish when you close your eyes, but the perception you have registered in your mind will linger for a while. And therefore you have to look at your perception inside your mind, and see either your perception is right or wrong. You may think it is right. Open your eyes and associate or go to the person and so forth. Your perception is wrong. So that is why it is called a mirage. From a distance, mirage looks like water. When you go closer, there is no water. It is a mental perception. We have to look at our mind and see how quickly this perception changes and something else appears in the mind. You may remember something else, then your perception is gone. So you have to see how quickly perception changes in your own mind. Look at the mind. Look at the mind. Don't ask where the mind is, but see what the mind does. That deceives you for you to think that is such and such and such and such. You see the pictures on the screen. You see the pictures. You see Banteji with head and ears and nose, all this, and the picture of the meditation hall and whatever else you see from the Buddha statue and so forth. But are they really there? Try to catch me. Try to shake hand with me. Can you shake hand with me? Can you touch my head from there? No. Can you touch the altar and light a candle on the altar there from there? No. It is perception. You close your eyes, all this will disappear. And even if you get closer to that, you look at it, you see a meditation hall. When you come and you take all of them apart, everyone, every piece apart, you can see some, stack of logs, a stack of concrete, a stack of metal, this and that. There is a meditation hall. Only when you put them together, you call the meditation hall. Then break them and make chairs and tables and something else, you call them that name. Perception is a kind of naming system that we put together. We give those names to something that put together and then accept it and conventionally said that is a meditation hall, that is such and such and such and such. But in reality, they are not there. Whatever perception you have, that is why we have a distorted perception. Perception is always not the correct one. It is distorted. Easy to distort our perception. And therefore, in order to get rid of that perception, you look at the changes that take place. I emphasize changes all the time, not because I have changed for so many years, but it is happening to you and to everything else in the universe. When things are changing from moment to moment, what you perceive first is no longer there in the second moment. That is true. And that truth we can see only when we gain mindfulness and concentration together. And you can see things change so fast. As I mentioned many times, even the mind cannot keep up with the changes. Mind cannot pinpoint one from the other, isolate one from the other. So quickly they change. Perception is changing so quickly. So look at your mind. Whenever any perception arises, look at the mind. What happened when perception arises? We add thoughts, we add more concepts, we add more ideas, and we add theories and our beliefs. All kind of things we put into perception, and then we get bewildered and confused. And therefore, make it simple. Simplest thing is the most difficult to understand because the mind has already been conditioned for complicated things, and therefore make it less complicated. Then you can slowly train your mind to get rid of your perception and be in the very clear, pure state of mind. Okay, Brian, we have any more questions?
Simple but not easy. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
The next question, Bhante, has to do with the experience of neutral feelings in relation with ignorance. The person is asking why it's said that the experience of neutral feelings is due to ignorance. Sometimes we remain indifferent to pleasant or unpleasant feelings without any greed or aversion. So could neutral feelings with awareness be equanimity?
Yes, neutral feeling has ignorance as underlying tendency. Why is that? Neutral feeling is so subtle, so therefore it is very difficult for someone to identify it or isolate it. Very difficult because of its subtlety. And therefore there is an underlying tendency of ignorance. Ignorance is not knowing. A neutral feeling is hard to know. But one who is wise, one who develops his practice, then the person can make the distinction between pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feeling. So that person needs to have a great deal of sharp intuition or inferential knowledge. Buddha gave a simile to make it clear. Suppose a deer hunter, this is very famous simile. A deer hunter chases a deer, and deer runs some distance, and then there is a huge rock, and he crosses the rock and goes to the other side of the rock. The deer hunter follows the footsteps of the deer and sees the footprints up to the rock, and then he continues chasing deer. He may not see the deer, but he can see the footprint continues from the other side of the rock. So he concludes the deer certainly might have crossed this rock, although the footprint of the deer could not see on the rock. But he concluded that is his inferential awareness or knowledge of the fact that deer crossed the rock. Similarly, when one becomes aware of pleasant feeling, as the pleasant feeling slowly fades away, neutral feeling arises before unpleasant feeling. Soon he will notice the unpleasant feeling. If his mindfulness continues, is very mindful, then he can notice the beginning of unpleasant feeling at the end of neutral feeling. And he notices the neutral feeling begins at the end of pleasant feeling. That way the person can infer that there is a feeling called neutral feeling. So you have to have a very sharp intuition, insight, mindfulness in order to understand the existence of feeling called neutral feeling. And the other thing is, even the neutral feeling is not permanent. That is why you have pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling. In between unpleasant feeling and pleasant feeling, there is neutral feeling. That also is impermanent. So, the most of the practice comes from wisdom. So you have to be wise to make the distinction between pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, and neutral feelings. Okay, if you don't know that, then there's ignorance as underlying tendency. Okay, next question.
The next question also has to do with feelings. When we watch the rising and passing away of feelings, there can be that it's still tainted by likes and dislikes, even if one has been practicing, for example, for 20 years. Is this because of asaras? Does this tendency ever really subside when we are in difficult situations?
Sure. Asavas are so hidden, they are samsaric tendencies, influxes. The word asava can be translated as fermentation. There is in Ayurvedic system there is a fermented medicine to drink. That's called ashrava. Asava in Pali is in Sanskrit also called ashrava. Ashrava is something that that Ayurvedic specialist make. You take various type of nuts, roots, barks, leaves, and so forth, and put in a certain container and cover it very well. Put water, cover it very well, and bury it in the ground for a certain period of time. During that time, it brews, and then they know how long it should be underground, and then they take it out and filter it, and then they drink it, so give to patients, and that cures certain diseases. And that particular concoction, that drink, is called ashrava. Similarly, in our samsaric existence, in life after life or life after life, we have accumulated greed, hatred, delusion, kamasava, bhavasava, avidyasava, ditthasava, that is desire. We brood desire in various forms to exist, to have sensual pleasures, and the belief in existing permanent self, and so forth. These things are brewed in our mind. That means we kept growing them, multiplying, accumulating, depositing in our mind, and therefore they are there. So even if we meditate, there are very pleasant feelings. They may even be jhanic feeling, feeling of pure arupa, shanta, vimoksha, arupa. Even until one attains full enlightenment, even if one is in neither perception nor non-perception mental state, even at that state, these asavas are working. Asavas are there as underlying tendencies. And therefore, we have to understand the strength, the power, subtlety of these tendencies. will also